Namaste.
Namaste, everyone. Thanks for joining. You can stop your video and mute your audio. I can stop video for you.
Namaste and Hare Krishna. I'd like to welcome everyone this evening. My name is Balabhadra Bhattacharya Das. I'm the president of Vedic Friends Association. Of course, we're the ones that are hosting this event this evening. And I want to begin with a very beautiful, important prayer, which is offered to all the spiritual teachers coming from the beginning of time. And it's important to understand that the conception of guru is that the guru is one, but the guru appears in an infinity of forms, many different forms, many different persons have contributed to developing the proper understanding of Vedic philosophy, going all the way back to the very beginning. In fact, it says in one holy scripture, Srimad Bhagavad Puran, Tene Brahma Hridaya Adhikavye, that the first person in this universe, first creature within the universe, was given Vedic knowledge, Tene Brahma Hridaya, in the heart. And then that person passed it down and passed it down and passed it down. And we're trying our humble best as members of the Vedic Friends Association to help preserve and promote the true understanding of Vedic philosophy. So I'll begin with this prayer. Om Ajnana Timirandasya Jananjanan Salakaya Chakurimitam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha Shri Chaitanya Manobhistam Stapitam Yena Bhutale Swayam Rupakada Mahyam Dadate Swa Padantikam. So we offer our respects to all current gurus, past gurus, all the way back to the beginning. So the theme of our series, which we're starting tonight, we had our kickoff event last month, but this is the beginning of our series of presentations. And the theme is tools, Tools, tools for human empowerment. Our focus is to make sure that whatever we bring to you as our participants, our audience, are valuable tools that you can use in the pursuit of your own personal spiritual endeavors, especially within the context of the Vedic culture. And we have some wonderful speakers lined up for you. In fact, just this afternoon, I got a confirmation from one of our speakers who will be presenting next month. That is Professor Jeffrey Long, and he's just finished a new book as well. So he'll be here next month. And after that, we have Padma Bhushan, David Frawley, one of the founders of VFA, Vedic Friends. And of course, we have Stephen Knapp, Sri Nandanandana, a prolific writer as well. And a very special treat, we have Robert Arnett, who has a wonderful, wonderful book about his experiences in India. Very beautiful. But we're so fortunate tonight that we have one of the founders of the Vedic Friends Association, and he will be presenting this evening. So I'm going to ask Anjali Nagrani to introduce him, and we'll go from there. Anjali, please.
Namaste, everyone. Jeffrey Armstrong, or Kavindra Rishi, is the founder of the Vedic Academy of Sciences and Arts, or VASA, and a renowned international speaker. He is also an award-winning poet and best-selling author of numerous books, including Spiritual Teachings of the Avatar, Ancient Wisdom for a New World. He has been featured in the CBC documentary Planet Yoga, the Leo Award-winning documentary Take Back Your Power, Wings of Yoga, and 2 documentaries on Ayurveda and psychology for Mind Valley. He has degrees in psychology, English literature, and a history in comparative religion, and spent 5 years in an ashram as a brahmachari or monk. Though born a Westerner, he's dedicated most of his adult life to learning about, practicing, and teaching Vedic wisdom. At age 50, he left the corporate world and took a vow to dedicate the rest of his life to only teach the Vedic knowledge. He has worked with prominent Indian organizations to help with the revival of Sanatana Dharma culture by teaching at Hindu youth camps, universities, and civic centers throughout India, America, and Europe. He's the Vice Chairman of the Vedic Friends Association and is active with the British Board of Dharmic Scholars. Kavindra Rishiji, a very, very, very warm welcome to you to this evening's program.
Namaste, Anjali, and thank you very much for the introduction, and to everyone. It's wonderful that we're going to have these gatherings now.
Absolutely. So you recently launched a new translation of the Bhagavad Gita. And I was just wondering, given that there are already so many translations out there of this book, why the need for another?
The word translation means to carry across. And in this case, Sanskrit is the most clear and precise of the languages that we know of on our planet. And everything in Sanskrit is very precise in its meaning, and they don't drift over time. English is a very polyglot language filled with Latin, Greek, many different other languages, French. And so the meanings in English are very slippery and not always precise. And we have to therefore use the just right English word to do credit to the Sanskrit word. The next part is that because India was colonized for several hundred years, the terms of Christianity have been used by translators of the Sanskrit because they really had to do that to reach the audience of their time. So what I have done is remove those colonizing words, include about 100 Sanskrit words in the Bhagavad Gita verses. They're the 100 words that every student of the Vedas must know. And then I've made a glossary with a reasonable definition of those so that when they're used in the text, you can refer quickly to the definition. And in this way, this Bhagavad Gita is as clear as it has ever been. Even though all the Gitas were sincere and conveyed important knowledge, it was the verses that were the least clear because of the translation issue from Sanskrit to English.
So can you give us an example of some of those words that we may have heard in everyday language that may not be well translated and that Googling would just not do justice to? Sorry, can you hear me? Can you hear me now? I have sound on. Can you hear me now?
Yeah, we can hear you.
Okay. Seems like maybe he lost sound.
Yeah, I didn't touch it.
Jeffrey, did you hear the question? I think Jeffrey,
Hello?
did you lose the sound, Jeffrey?
But it's back now.
Okay, good.
Can hear you absolutely perfectly.
So go ahead, Anjali.
So there are many words that we hear that are derived from Vedic philosophy, Bhagavan, Atma, and we possibly do not have good definitions of them because we have not, maybe we've just Googled them to understand what they are. Could you give us a handful of words that you think you have done a better translation on that we can understand better as seekers on this path?
The word that we need to use is synonym or equivalent.
Okay.
So many of the words that are Christian words, soul is a good example, have been used as synonyms or equivalents for the word Atma. But the Atma goes from birth to birth, goes through all the species incarnating in that particular body, then becomes human. So the Atma is on an epic journey that is very particular and specifically described in the Vedas. The soul is a word used by Christianity. For all of us, we supposedly have one, but we sinned previously and were born a sinner. And then we have to rectify that, and we have only one life in which to do that. And by the way, we go to heaven or hell. In English, hell means a hole in the ground, and heaven is from the word aven, which is for getting enough oatmeal. It's a Scottish word. So heaven has no meaning, and neither does hell, and neither does soul, except one lifetime. But those words were used, the word soul was used in place of the 100 or so times that Atma occurs in the Bhagavad Gita. And Atma means a particle of Brahman. It eventually became atome in Latin. You can't cut it. Second chapter of the Gita, Krishna says, you can't cut it, you can't wet it, you can't blow it with the wind, you can't destroy it, you can't remove it. It's immortal, always existed, and always will. So now you can see the mischief caused by thinking that that Atma and soul are synonyms.
That's a very good example. And similarly to the word Atma and soul, again, as a beginner, if I was to pick up the Bhagavad Gita today, are there any specific chapters, short of reading it from cover to cover, are there any specific chapters that one should focus on where there is an introductory understanding of what the Vedic philosophy is all about?
Well, in the case of the Gita, Arjuna is asking a question of Bhagavan, and he said, or rather, he's upset. He says, I just can't kill all of my relatives and family and friends because there's a conflict about to take place. The first thing Krishna says is, well, that's right, you can't kill anyone because they're Atma and they can't die. So why are you so upset? But if you put the word soul in there, once again, you don't have the correct Sanskrit to use to explain Atma, then you can't talk about reincarnation, and then you can't talk about a myriad of other things. So this is the mischief that happened during colonization. Christian words that do not have the same meaning as Sanskrit were used as synonyms for them.
Excellent. So Anjali, I do have a question for Jeffrey. Is that okay?
Please, absolutely.
So Govindraji, I think people would find it interesting to hear how you came in contact with the Bhagavad Gita and Vedic teachings, because as Anjali pointed out, many people possibly on this call are new to this culture, new to the philosophy, of course, new to the words. So you being a Westerner, not born in India, growing up in this country, educated in this country, and how you became involved in this process. And then second part of that, it's like there's so many Bhagavad Gitas, as you pointed out, probably hundreds of editions of the Bhagavad Gita. And some of them have not gone very deep into the understanding of the actual Vedic culture. Just so someone learned some Sanskrit possibly and did some translation work. They had some appreciation, which is also good. But how long did it take you to put this together? How much did you put into it? Did you have people helping you with it? Or did you just sort of 1 year you got it done and boom, it's out there? So I think that would be interesting. So if you don't mind.
It's a layered question. It's a great one, Balabadraji. So first of all, in 1969, when I met my guru and joined his ashram, where I spent 5 years, because I'd been an English and literature and poetry major in university, I was in a pretty high level of English usage. So the first thing he did was make me one of his proofreaders as he was translating the Bhagavad Purana, the Bhagavad Gita, and other works. And so I was thrust into a situation of helping perfect the language. But I knew nothing about Sanskrit at that time. So I couldn't even raise this question, but I could clear up his English usage so that it was more readable and said what he was trying to say without interfering. And at that time, that was my job. But as time wore on, and as I did more and more research into this, I then went back to school, got a degree in history and comparative religion, and studied Sanskrit with a Banaras Pandit, became a Jyotishi. So in the process of all of this, I began to examine the meaning of words, because this is actually how we receive something like the Bhagavad Gita, is by giving us a new vocabulary. And this is the part that has gotten in the way of the translation process, because very sincere people from India who knew Sanskrit and Hindi and were second users of English. No second user is going to compare to somebody who's at the 99th percentile of an English speaking learning. But even then, I didn't know a very important thing. So this is it. In English, there are two kinds of dictionaries. And it took me until 10 years ago to find this out. Imagine that. At the age of 63, after all of that study and research, I still didn't know there were two kinds of dictionaries in English. The first one is called a usage dictionary. That's the one everyone uses. And it tells you how the word is being used in society today. Interesting story on this is the two poets, Chaucer and Shakespeare in English, the two perhaps most famous of the poets. Their works were useless 100 years after they were written, because English had changed so much in 100 years, no one could understand the English that they wrote their poems in. So English has been this very turbulent, moving target language, whereas Sanskrit is this ancient, perfect language that's designed to never drift in its meanings. So think of English as wobbling all over the place, and Sanskrit is very precise. But the second kind of dictionary in English is called an etymological dictionary. And an etymological dictionary is one that tells you the origin of a word. So as it turns out, English is filled with words that came from French, that came from Latin, that came from Greek. But what all the colonizing scholars, Christianity, much of academia, did not want everyone to know was that Sanskrit, the most perfect language in existence on earth, preceded and was the source of Greek, Latin, 70% of European languages, English, all go back to Sanskrit, and went back 7,000 years ago, 5 to 7,000 years ago, depending on who you talk to, when the Bhagavad Gita was written. So this means, if it's true that all of this knowledge came from India and that the Bhagavad Gita was spoken that long ago, it ruins the history of the Abrahamic religions. It has no precedent, and it's the thing that all the colonizers have been resisting. So you could say their resistance caused them to not want the language to become clear, and it to not be clear what the real story behind India and its knowledge is. And so all of these obstructions caused us to not know how to gain clarity in the language. So the etymological dictionary that I found is out of print, and it's called Origins. And this dictionary traces words from English to other languages, German, say, then to Latin, and then to Greek, and then to Sanskrit in the dictionary. In other words, an etymological dictionary shows you the source of the word. Let me give you an example. The word God in English came into English from the Dutch, where it was Gut, G-U-T. It went into Dutch from the German, which is G-H-U-T, Gut. And so Gut became a hoot, the German Gut became Gut in Dutch, and then God in English. But the word that originated that chain was Sanskrit, and the word is Hutam, H-U-T-A-M. Hutam became Gutam in German, Gut in Dutch, and God in English. Gutam appears 4 times in the Bhagavad Gita. And you know the fire idea where people make offerings into the fire? It's called Agnihotra Yajna. So when you place your offering in the fire, the smoke rising up is called Hutam. So the English word God literally means the smoke arising from a Vedic fire yajna.
Wow.
That's its actual meaning. Who knows this? Nobody I've ever met knows this, not Sanskritists, not everyday English speakers, because they don't read etymological dictionaries. But if you look in an etymological dictionary, that sequence I just showed you is plainly given. When you look up the word God, it shows you Gut in Dutch and Gutam in German and Hutam in Sanskrit. And there are hundreds of words like that if
Wow.
you look for them.
Amazing. Anjali?
So just going back to Prabhuji's second part of his question, is that what prompted you to come up with another translation, realizing that the English words were not doing justice to the Sanskrit words and that the existing translations were not sufficient for readers to
Exactly.
truly grasp those meanings?
Yes, and the precursor to that was trying to teach in English. So 10 years before I discovered etymological dictionaries, actually 13 years, I had been just doing that, teaching the Vedas out in the world. My partner Sandy and I have been together 23 years. In the first 13 years, we went all over the world teaching the Vedic knowledge in English. But gradually I began to see the problem or the awkwardness in translating. So I would make up metaphors that would help people understand. So I called the universe the university because we're Atmas and we're here going to school. And it's K through PhD, and K is protozoa. So our first birth as a protozoa then led us to become a bird, and then led us to become a mammal, and then led us to become a human. And then once we're human, we have to learn and grow and think and ask questions. That's what yoga is. It's the stage where you start asking questions about who you really are. And then finally, those answers are available to us. But this journey means that we're really in a school, and namaste is saying hello to your fellow classmates. But what's at the center of namaste and reincarnation is the Atma, which cannot die. So when you sort out the language, you sort out the meaning.
So Jeffrey, on that point about namaste, because I was recently teaching my youngest granddaughter, she's 5, teaching her namaste. And I explained it to her in a way that she could appreciate it. Namaste meaning that the spirit in me respects the spirit in you. Something like that, very simple. But then I realized that that's really not the actual point, because when the spirit in you, there's more than one spirit in you. So we say in you, meaning in this body, as Krishna says in the second chapter of the Gita, Dehino asminyata dehe kaumaram yauvanam jara. And the soul is passing. The soul, which is separate, is passing. But within the same body, there's another soul, which Bhagavad Gita talks about, the Param Atma. There's the Atma and then the Supreme Atma. So could you address that a little bit about clarifying that concept that the spirit in me, the soul within the body, is respecting not only you, but also the Supreme Spirit within you?
So now let's ask the same question. Let's say we started in a different way slightly with that question and say, first, let's say what we're not, and then let's say what we are. Now you're going to need a new vocabulary because you're going to need to know what this physical structure that we've been calling self is, and separate it from the consciousness from the Atma, which is from Brahman. So in order to have this conversation, we have to say there's a realm called Brahman that we come from. We're called an Atma. We've come to Prakriti, the place of matter. Matter is divided into 8 different elements. As you know, all things mentioned in the Gita: earth, water, fire, air, space. Now then, manas, buddhi, ahamkara. So we have to have about a 20-word vocabulary, including some words in Sanskrit for the stages of karma, to just describe being here.
Wow.
And not a single one of those words exists in English. So unless we have the permission of the student, and they're mature enough to do this, they have to learn 10 or 15 words every question they ask that have precise meanings in Sanskrit and don't even exist in English. English doesn't have any words for reincarnation. A good example is transcendental, which means transcendere, to leap, scandere, trans, beyond. In fact, it's from the Sanskrit word skanda, the supposed son of Shiva and Durga. So to leap beyond, but where do you leap to? So if you use the English word and say, oh, I'm a transcendentalist, then I say, where are you going? You say, what do you mean? I don't know. So what's your spirit? Well, you know, that's and you try to describe it. And so here's a really great example. What spirit is from is the word suke, which is a Greek word. And the goddess Suke is present when you see butterflies flying around flowers.
Mm.
And so it's a Greek term, suke. And then it eventually became Psyche, the sister or brother of spirit. And then Psyche was invented by Sigmund Freud, took Psyche from Suke and made it into psychoanalysis. But analysis means to get rid of what is not yours and to keep what is. And psyche is what I just said. So Freud gave the definition that psychoanalysis means freeing the butterfly, which we would call the Atma, which you just referred to as spirit, which otherwise is known as the soul. But are they synonyms? No. Spirit's not a synonym, soul's not a synonym, psyche's not a synonym, but they're all extensions of the Atma's presence inside the Karana and the Antakarana. The word car, as in automobile, comes from the Sanskrit karana, which is the term for our body. So until we get into this linguistics, think of this. This is the tools you were talking about. That VFA wants to give tools to the Vedic community to be Vedic without making them go down a sectarian road. We want to empower them with being an ambassadorial, with ways of talking about the Vedic culture, like university. We just think one more thing in astrology, the planets are called the grahas. Supposedly they give you your karma. So I call them UPS, Universal Parcel System. Because in the past, in previous lives, we've done things, and the reward for what we've done, happy or not happy, is coming toward us. So there's got to be a branch of the universe that delivers that cause and effect. To what? In our karana, us down here in our car, driving around. Who's driving? The Atma. Now you see how I'm shifting the dialogue?
Yes.
Because now the student, to really be a student, has to keep adding vocabulary. Because if this was a cell phone, you'd have to learn 100 new words to program it correctly.
Excellent.
On the topic, if I may, on the topic of words that are and are not used correctly or translated into English, I would say the word karma is pretty well spoken of and used in everyday language.
I'm afraid my sound has gone off again.
Can you hear me now?
Sorry about that.
That's okay. Let me know if you can hear me now.
Anjali, I cannot hear you. Sorry about that.
Okay.
Hi.
Give me a moment.
Are
Are you okay now, Jeffrey? Not yet.
I'd like to encourage the audience to type any questions they have in the chat window.
We're back again. I can hear you.
Okay. Age of technology, huh?
Indeed, we're lucky to be able to do this, but it's also fraught with its own problems. I'm back and I can hear you. Go ahead.
Absolutely.
Anjali, want to say?
Yes. So I was asking about the word karma. It's a word that's pretty prevalent in the English language. Would you say it is used in the correct context and people have a good understanding of it?
Now this is going to let us look deeply into Sanskrit. So good choice. At the root of the word karma and dharma is a word called ritam. So the basis of that is the ri. It's a dotted R, a special character in Sanskrit.
Mm.
The ri is a very deep root, and that root first manifests as ritam, which means the laws of nature. From this, in English, we get rhythm, arithmetic, written.
Mm.
All of those words are from the Sanskrit ritam. Ritam is based on ri. So first, there must be laws of nature that are immutable, that we're accountable to. That's called a ritam. As soon as you have that, then violation of those laws or working with them produces two different results, and that result is called karma. Karma is going against or with the ritam. In Sanskrit, the word seasons is ritus. They're different times of year where the ritam is changing spring to fall to summer to winter to this. In each climate zone, there are a different number of seasons. So ritam, ritus, written. Now we're beginning to see this layering that who knows in English that they're speaking Sanskrit when they say rhythm or arithmetic or writing. So the Kri indicates that we're in cause and effect. But if we're the Atma and we go from life to life and we can't die, then our cause and effect follows us. Then if it does, it becomes karma. So how would I avoid getting negative karma? Oh, glad you asked. By dharma, which is dri, same root, same ritam. But now the root dri means the essential nature of a thing, which if you take it away, it is no longer itself. Take liquidity away from the water, it is no longer water. The dharma of water is to be liquid. If you violate that dharma, you get karma. Or if you work with it, you get karma. One is pleasant, the other is unpleasant. Why? Because the laws of nature cannot be violated without a consequence. So now, with that one question, we've opened up these three profoundly important words. Dharma is to act according to the laws of nature and use everything accordingly. Now, what if everyone on our planet was doing that right now? It would be a different world.
Mm.
Now, what is your own responsibility then? Well, you've got a special body, so your own body becomes your sva dharma. We added a prefix now, which means the dharma that goes with the car you're driving. It's one's own karma, meaning, or dharma means the thing you do best in this car, in this body, in this vehicle. So one by one, these Sanskrit words open up vistas of this kind for us.
Amazing. So Anjali, let's see if we have any questions from someone in the audience. Do we have any questions so far? Anyone? What about in the chat?
I don't see any in the chat so far.
Yeah, I don't want to take over all the questions, but I do have a couple of more.
Good.
Go for it.
Yeah, do it.
Oh, someone says I have one from Ravine Johnson. Is that right?
Please go ahead.
You can unmute yourself, I believe. Ravine Johnson. Unless you want to just type it.
Namaste.
Namaste.
I was going to type the question. Thank you.
Thank you
So
for
I
coming.
was wondering if Dharma was more like a quality or an occupation.
Excellent. Jeffrey?
Right. So we need a prefix or we need a modifier. So there are two words, sanatan, which means always true forever under all circumstances in the context that we're speaking of. And then sva-dharma means the best use of your particular automobile, which leads to what Raven is alluding to, which is your what's called your varna is the four categories of workers inside the social body of society. One is the head. Those are the ones who are the knowledge-based individuals. Their dharma is to keep and protect and share knowledge. Then the next is the shoulders and chest of the social body, and that's the ones who are the protectors. Their responsibility is to take care of, protect, preserve, and when necessary, stop various problems. And then the next is, so I've given these English names to go with them, and there are Sanskrit names to go with them. The next is the stomach. The stomach is the food producers, the money producers, all of the people whose abilities lie in producing abundance and sharing that and passing it around. And then finally, the last group is the legs of the cosmic and social body. And those are the ones who make everything happen. So they're called the service industries or the service occupations. Now, every one of us, according to our karana, is better suited for one of those occupations. So I've named them in English, starting with the top, with the head, professor, then protector, then producer at the belly, and then provider at the legs. In Sanskrit, they are Brahmin, Kshatriya, Vaishya, Shudra, the so-called varnas. So the varnas are not castes. It's not your family that determines your varna, it's your ability and your hunger for a particular kind of activity. So it used to be in the schools in India that the teachers would watch a student carefully to see which of those was their nature and propensity. And then they would educate them in that direction so that they fulfilled themselves and were happy doing what they did. And then they would become a part of the social body doing that. And so all of this is a part of this question of karma. What are different kinds of karma? And as Raven asked, dharma then is two kinds. Things that are true for everyone always, sanatana dharma. Things that are particularly relevant to your particular vehicle and are the proper thing for you to do with that vehicle. So give me an example. Pickup truck. Let's say your body's a pickup truck. Then should we make it a race car? No. Should we make it a luxury automobile? No. So the entire civilization and culture of the Vedic civilization was using these ways of looking at everyone, not to control them, but to help organize the social body in such a way that everyone benefit. And that's also Sanatana Dharma. The rulers are supposed to make sure everyone benefits to the optimum degree.
So I'll ask another question that's been on the chat. How does one discover their sva-dharma?
Well, this is where the psychology of the Vedas or Jyotish comes in. The horoscope in Vedic astrology is simply an analysis of the engineering specifications of the vehicle you got. So by looking at the birth chart, the arrangement of the planetaries and the stellar energies is a kind of language talking about the karmas being carried by the person born at that particular moment. So then, by looking at their horoscope and confirming it with the Ayurvedic doctor, you'll know their body type the vata, the pitta, the kapha. Are they made of mostly earth and water, mostly fire, or mostly air? Once again, this will influence their diet. This will influence the way they live in the world, all of these things. So this integrated web of vocabulary, eventually a picture emerges for us based on the single important notion that everything, every being is immortal, but they're transiting through a particular body. And the more sophisticated the body for us humans, then we need to look into how to use it. And none of this is from the so-called distorted word caste. It's all from an analysis, which we call in Sanskrit, samkhya. Asking, na iti, what is me and what is not me? This is neti in Sanskrit. It means this is me, this is not me. This is not me. This is not me. This is not me. I am what? Myself is what? Atma.
Very powerful.
There's another question there from Lorna. No, one more from
Leora. So I think Jeffrey G just answered the second question, which was
see it, yeah.
using Jyotish, how do you determine one's varna? Do you look at the placement of the moon, lagna, or something else?
All right. Well, that's a very technical question, but essentially, just think of our body as an arrangement of opposing forces, which each have a function, but in some ways that function is opposite to another function. So if we let one of those functions control all the others, it's called disease. But if we find the balance point where all those functions are working together, they're still each doing a different function. So in Western civilization, we have a medical system that's for emergencies that tries to put you back together when you've been badly damaged. That's useful. But we have no medical practice that's authenticated by our government for preventing illness and for lifestyle of knowing how to live correctly in the vehicle you're in. The Vedic civilization had both. It had a manual on surgery called the Sushruta Samhita. It had a medical manual called the Charaka Samhita, and it had dietary injunctions for every body type, so you knew what fuel to put in each body type, in each climate, in each place. Really, what we call science emerged from the Vedas and emerged in this language. So I hope this is demonstrating that in order to become a Vedic practitioner, it is the vocabulary and accuracy of translating those Sanskrit words into English that will make all the difference in the clarity of your understanding and the precision of what you say.
So there's another question here from Leora. Could you explain what exactly is meant by the claim that Sanskrit, the original, is a programming language? How and why is it a programming language? And what is it programming? What is it programming?
Right. So there's 2 or 3 different levels for answering questions like that, but the first one is very simple. As I explained with English, the meanings are not inherent in the word. And so the word as we come to know of it in English has already drifted several times away from where it began as a word somewhere else. Some of those origins are quite final, like it was with hutam. It's gutam, it's hutam in Sanskrit, it's gutam in German, it's gut in Dutch, it's God in English. And therefore, the original meaning of the word God is the smoke arising from a Vedic yajna, from a Vedic offering into the fire, sacred offering. So now, how do we then become precise in this reprogramming? How do we actually find a place where we stop and have conclusive meaning. What you now know is that the usage dictionary in English does not do that. It doesn't tell you the original meaning of the word or its history. It just tells you how everyone's using or misusing it right now. How is Sanskrit different? Sanskrit is based upon something called dhatu. Dhatu means every word has a root syllable, a root phrase that is the basis of the word. And those dhatus or roots never drift or change their meaning. In the Sanskrit alphabet, there are not 26 letters, there are 50 some, 52. And there are not an arbitrary way of combining, but a specific way of combining those root meanings. I showed you that with Ri.
Mhm.
We went back to Ritam, and then we went to Kri, and we went to Dri. So Sanskrit doesn't change its mind about meaning over time. This means whatever it meant 10,000 years ago, it still means today. It means when you construct a Sanskrit word, there are ways to modify that root, and then that gives you another meaning, and then another meaning. So many Sanskrit words have 10 or so meanings. First level, second level, third level. But the language hasn't arbitrarily drifted according to changes in the culture. So the other languages in India, Hindi, Urdu, etc., all are drifting like English does. They're rooted in Sanskrit, but they're somewhat drifted from it. That means they're not as rigorous as Sanskrit is. Ask yourself, well, a lot of scholars say Sanskrit's a dead language, but Latin is a dead language, and Greek, Old Greek is a dead language. No one's speaking those these days. But in India, there are millions of people who watch television that's spoken in Sanskrit. That's the same Sanskrit the Bhagavad Gita was written in 7,000 years ago. It's the same Sanskrit that was active 10,000 years ago. And we don't know how far back it goes, but we do know it doesn't change over time. This solidity and stability in the building of words and their meaning tells us that the Sanskrit words do not change their meaning over any amount of time. Therefore, it is the ultimate scientific language. Programming in the sense that it allows us to have reliable, steady definitions that don't change. Now, here's the second answer, and I'll do it briefly. The alphabet and the words that come from it in Sanskrit are called aksharas.
Mm.
The Brahman that I spoke of earlier, which is the realm from which all the Atmas come, and Paramatma, as you said, Balabhadra, that realm of Brahman is completely luminous and always existing. And the opposite is the place where we live in matter, in Prakriti, which is always dark and limiting and problematic. So the alphabet of Sanskrit landed within matter as the Akshara Brahman. Think of it as little drops of light or gold that sparkled down from the realm of light. And each of those is the letters in the Sanskrit alphabet, which are actually called the matrikas, the little mothers. They're the mothers of meaning. Then those syllables and words and the alphabet came together and started forming packets of meaning. This is why mantras connect us back to Brahman, because the Sanskrit alphabet is actually sparks of the light of Brahman landing inside of matter as sound vibration and appearing as an alphabet and a language. But the words of Sanskrit directly connect us to Brahman. And when they're put in certain combinations, they give us the meanings that are not available otherwise. When they're done in particular combinations like mantras, they link us directly back to Brahman, and our Atma is now fed by Brahman energy. That's the quick summary.
Very nice. Anjali, there's one more question. Can you read that question from Vivek?
I would be happy to.
This is the last question.
So Jeffrey G has said in one of his videos, English is a transactional language, while Sanskrit is a language to carry language over a long period of time. Can you please elaborate?
I can. I think he means meaning, but transactional for English because most of the words in English that we trust are object words. If I say this is a book, we know that in Spanish it's el libro, but it doesn't really matter. So in linguistics, that's called a skinny word because it's not arbitrary. Here's a pen. So la pluma in Spanish, but who cares? It's just another way to say the object, a pen. Okay, so that's a skinny word. If I say I love you, that's a fat word. This is how linguists do it. I didn't make it up. So linguists call object words skinny words. Their meaning is obvious. And meaning words like love, love's a fat word. I love my dog, I love pizza, and I love you. Now, wait a minute. What do you mean by love then? Am I a pizza? Am I a pet? Am I your pet? Well, maybe. It's a love word. We say, oh, you're my pet, but we don't mean I'm going to put a collar on you and walk you downtown. It's an endearment term. So a lot of the English is interesting in that way because it's so freewheeling and you can make up poems and make up sayings. You might say it's the king of slang usage and loose usage, but it's not useful for meaning. The word love in English comes from the Sanskrit lobha, which means greed. I'm greedy for my dog. I'm greedy for my beloved. I'm greedy for pizza. Not a very literate word. And therefore, we have to throw a lot more words at it to try to get close to what we really mean. What kind of love? Explain yourself. But the word doesn't. So this is the biggest problem in English, that the meaning words, just like psychoanalysis, did you ever think it meant letting the butterfly loose? And for Freud, the butterfly is obviously what we're calling the Atma. Atma is trapped in the body, letting the butterfly loose. But Freud didn't know Atma, so he said psyche, suke, letting the psyche loose. Okay, halfway to paradise. But we would call it freeing the Atma from the bondage of matter, of Prakriti. And Prakriti is covering the Atma, and the word for the matter that covers over the Atma is gu, G-U. How interesting. The other word in English is G-O-O. So we're covered in gu, according to the Sanskrit. And then a guru, ru means to remove. So a guru is someone who helps you remove your gu, which is not identify yourself with your body, but identify yourself as the Atma coming from Brahman. And now we're talking yoga. Now we're removing the gu that's blinded and it'll make us unconscious so that the consciousness of our Atma shines and is always present. And now we're redirecting ourselves from our next birth in the gu to go back to where we came from. That's the graduation ceremony in the university.
And here I was just thinking guru meant teacher. So thank you for that. I think I'm always going to think of guru going forward.
That's the idea. Now you can program with it.
Absolutely. I think that ends our questions. Prabhuji, would you like to give some closing remarks?
Well, first of all, I want to thank you, Anjali, for co-hosting this event. You did a wonderful job, wonderful questions. And of course, Jeffrey G. Kavindra Rishi Prabhu, as always, you've enlivened me, and I hope the rest of the audience is also enlivened. I mean, I've had so many deep conversations with Jeffrey G. over the last couple of years. I mean, sometimes we go for a couple of hours just talking about some of the things we talked about tonight. And I think your last comments, Jeffrey Prabhu, is like, it's a advertisement for the next time you're going to speak. We got to get back into this guru concept again. We started with the gurus, Om Jnana, and we ended with the gurus. So now we have to continue going forward So we're looking forward to that. And, on behalf of VFA, which you're one of the founders, we want to thank you from our hearts for speaking to us tonight. And I'm sure everyone in the audience appreciated your presentation. And as I mentioned in the beginning, we have more coming as part of this Tools for Human Empowerment, because we are so convinced that that's what's missing in the world today. People don't know how to relate to the things that are happening to them. The coronavirus, the political situation, the racial situation, all those things can be understood from the Vedic viewpoint, and not just understood. Understanding is one thing. Like in the Bhagavad Gita in 18th chapter, it says, Jnana Vijnana. Jnana means the knowledge, and then Vijnana means to be able to have the wisdom or to be able to apply it. So that is our goal, to make sure that when you come to one of our events, there'll be something you can take away, even if it's as simple as guru or guru, a concept that you can keep in your mind, and it'll help you throughout the day. I mean, I've had the great fortune of practicing this process for about 47 years, and Jeffrey's been practicing for more like 50 years, and we're still learning. Every day we're learning something more. So please mark it on your calendar next month, December 17th, Thursday, 8 p.m. We have another guest speaker, Jeffrey Long, Professor Jeffrey Long, and he'll be presenting from his new book as well. So we look forward to you all coming back. And thank you, and have a wonderful, safe, and healthy week. Namaste, Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna.
And Balabhadraji,
Yes.
just one more thing. Since you said tools, and by the way, thank you for carrying the torch of Vedic Friends and being its leader, and Anjali for your wonderful work. But because I've been an astrologer, a Jyotishi, for over 40 years, about 43 years, so I have made up a name for what we do as astrologers, as Jyotishis. And that is, since we're studying the karma of the individual, I'm a karma mechanic.
That's a good one.
We'll remember that one easily.
And so
Thank
you're
you.
right. We need tools to be good at what we do.
Thank you so much. Okay.
Namaste.
Namaste.
Namaste all. Everyone, all the viewers, you can leave. Thank you for joining, and we'll meet in the next seminar.
Thank you so much, Prakashji.
Well,
Hare Krishna.
Indeed.
Actually, the coordinators can stay back
right.
Sure.
and
Just
let the
wait in.
rest drop off. Yeah, let the rest drop off.
Sandy said you should stay on.
Sandy ji,
Thank you, Sandy, for helping us. You're always good. You're always there.
She sure is. I think she's getting back on this second,
Okay.
so she can say goodbye herself. Are you there, Sandy?
yeah, she's there. She's
Vijay
on there.
Palod is there. Hey, Vijay Palod.
Vijay ji,
I was just saying to Anjali, her questions were so wonderful. She should make a profession out of this.
Definitely.
I tell her that all
Don't
the time.
already, I don't know, maybe you do.
I completely winged it, so I don't know that I deserve any credit for my questions.
Oh, but you have beautiful wings. You're a Saraswati.
Oh, you haven't heard her sing Kirtan yet. Oh my God. She's got a great.
Oh,
Haribol, I think it's just the VFA team, so we can be free to talk. And Vijay Palodji, if you can give
Yes.
your comment.
Haribol, Vijay Palodji. Haribol.
Hi, Vijay.
Can you hear me?
We want to see you though.
yeah,
Can we see you?
You can. I had to log on. Okay, I'll log in again. So please allow me. Thank you.
Hi.
is this our Raji or someone?
Yeah, our educational director, Raji, your
Raj,
words.
can you come on the camera so we can see you? At least
Okay, I'm
turn it
stopping
on.
the recording. All right.
Yeah, recording.
Hey, there you are.